Today we're diving into the incredible world of laser engraving on painted canvases. I didn't even know this was a thing until I saw a couple of posts on Facebook, and that got my curiosity and, of course, my attention. I will have some tips to share with you from my own testing and experience, and you will see firsthand how my engravings turned out. I will share what I found while reading all these posts and watching countless hours on YouTube, so you can start much further ahead than I did. Now, I'm using an xTool S1 here, but many of the tips will apply to a variety of brands and models. Exciting stuff for sure. Let's get started. It all needs to start with an idea before we even touch the laser engraver. Think about what you want to create: a detailed image, a geometric pattern, or even a logo. Planning is crucial because not every design translates well to a painted canvas. Contrast, line weight, and complexity all play a role. Today, I've chosen a few example designs to share with you. To get ready, we will jump straight into XCS. Heck, if you have the skills, bring your image into Photoshop or Affinity and really play with your picture settings before bringing it to your preferred laser software. When selecting your picture, make sure you keep in mind the size of your canvas and the capabilities of your laser engraver. We'll also test out settings in some sacrificial canvases, but more on that later. To start, let's make sure you get a high quality image. I have found some great pictures in Created Fabrica and also made a couple of images using ChatGPT and DALL-E. There are some specialized websites where you can find pictures specifically made for your laser engraving needs. I will leave some of those links in the description below. Use the image you selected and from there determine the paint colors you will use. But don't let that be what stops you from just trying new colors out. Experiment. Quick tip here: your canvas might not be square at all, so keep that in mind when printing your design. This is one of the reasons I tend to use a border around the picture, as a few times during my testing I used the entire space of the canvas only to find out that the canvas was actually crooked and the picture just looked off-center or just completely wrong. Here's where the fun begins. You can use water-based, acrylics, spray paints, or even texture mediums to create your canvas background. The key is to ensure that the paint layer isn't too thick. Thick paint can burn unevenly or produce unwanted smoke during engraving. I'm using spray paint for all my pieces. It is quick to dry and it gives a smooth surface that's perfect for engraving. Don't be afraid to experiment with colors and techniques to make your canvas unique. I find that spray painting is just more efficient, but you can also apply your favorite color using a brush or foam. Make sure your work area has enough airflow. Crack open a window or open the garage door if that helps. Also, you need to mind the temperature when spray painting. Each paint manufacturer or paint type will have an optimal temperature. In my case, 10 to 30 degrees Celsius is the ideal temperature to spray paint based on the manufacturer's recommendation. Check the drying time recommended. Also, how soon you can apply the next coat. Make sure you don't make too much of a mess and cover your work area. In a small workshop like mine, I found this Wagner spray paint station to work very well. Stay at least a good 25 centimeters from the surface, that is about 10 inches. The standard size of a spray can sometimes can help give you an idea of what that distance is. Just make sure you measure it first. For this application, I found it easier to start with just 3 colors: white, X color in the middle, and then end with black. If you want to apply more colors, remember to apply from lighter colors to darker. Start with white and end with black. What goes in between is up to you and your design. Another thing is that I use a mix of matte and glossy paints. Through the research I've done, my understanding is that this is not ideal, as you should stick with the same type of paint for all paints you plan to use. Some people prefer a good foundation to get better colors, or to simply avoid burning the canvas, they apply 2 layers of white plus 2 or even 3 layers of the color that follows. Go easy with the amount of paint you use. I technically sprayed 2 layers, and I say technically because I sprayed up and down, and then from left to right. Let's talk about the settings. This is the part where trial and error comes in. Every laser engraver is different. They might be the same brand or even the same model. you still will get different results. So you will need to test the power, the speed, and the focus of your machine to get the perfect result. The process I followed today was basically to take one of the picture and use a sacrificial canvas to test out the material settings. From the research I've done, whether it was YouTube or Facebook, I found that lower power and lower speed tends to work best with my machine. Remember, if your power is too high, you will burn the canvas. But if your power is too low, you might not get all the detail that you were hoping for. While the paint is drying, you can start working on the settings for your picture. Import your selection to XCS or Lightburn, as we said. One of the first things I do is to create a frame that represents the size of my canvas. I then create an inner frame where I place the picture. This is primarily to give me an idea of how the image is going to fit within the canvas. With the inner frame, I create a border simply because not all the canvases are square. So, if I try to take the entire length and width of the canvas, it just might look uneven. I think this frame or border makes the overall engraving look much nicer, and the border saves you engraving time, as you will not use the entire canvas. As for the picture, there are basically 3 settings that you need to adjust. That is sharpness, grayscale, and the invert option. For the sharpness, I go all the way to the max, and I do the same for the grayscale. And make sure you click that invert checkbox. That's it. Feel free to play with the brightness, saturation, and contrast. But for these examples, I took the default as I mentioned. I would recommend you do a lot of material testing. I know that this might seem like a waste of time or wasting material, but in the end, this will help you get a greater degree of assurance that your settings have been dialed in to your liking. Set aside 1 or 2 of these canvases that you're prepping, using the same colors, the same type of canvas, and reserve it for your material testing. Some folks recommend doing material testing with every project. I will leave that up to you. Remember, there are many variables that will determine the outcome of your engraving. The material you're printing on, whether you're using sheet or frame canvas, the type of paint that you're using, for example, acrylic versus water or oil-based, whether you're spray painting or using a brush. The different paint manufacturers, well, they all make different types of paints. The laser engraver you're using, the maintenance you've done in the machine, all the things play a role and impact the outcome of your engraving. In summary, material testing removes a lot of the guesswork, and in the end, you will end up saving a lot of time and material by doing this once. Make sure you write down the specifics of paint and the machine settings you use. You can use the back of the canvas in case you don't have enough real estate to engrave this information in the front of the canvas. For the material testing itself, I have seen people engraving different shapes like hearts and stars. This helps, of course, as they tend to be smaller and you can engrave a few rows with different settings. I tend to use the same picture that I will be engraving, just making it smaller. I adjust the size to have as many fit in my sacrificial canvas. Keep in mind that if you make your sample image too small, the picture is too small or the object is too small, you might not get a good or reliable test for your engraving. Now, let's talk about the actual settings for the engraving. The power settings are low for my laser engraver. I have the xTool S1 using the 40-watt module. From my findings, and for this machine, the power settings used for engraving on painted canvases tend to range from 8% all the way up to 22%. As for the speed, the S1 setting I found ranged from 180 to 400. For the bitmap mode, I have seen people using basically all of them, but for the most part, they gravitate between Bayer, Stucky, or Grayscale. I came across an article put together by the folks from xTool. It gave me a good understanding of the differences between the bitmap modes they have available within XCS. I will link the link below. Also, if you happen to have a particular preference based on what has worked best for you, please don't hesitate and leave it in the comments below. I'm certain we will all appreciate your contributions very much. Now, as for lines per centimeter, I have seen anywhere from 140 to 240. One thing to add here, because I think there is something to it, is that I have seen some people running multiple passes. The first pass is the engraving, and the second one is more of a cleanup run. The power stays the same during the first and second run. The bitmap mode stays and the lines per centimeter stays the same during both passes. Again, the only thing they do differently is that they start at a slower speed and then on the second pass they go faster just to do a cleanup. As always, when working in the shop, please make sure you wear your PPE. That's your personal protective equipment. I know many lasers come built within an enclosure with very good fans and exhaust systems, but don't forget we are engraving on painted canvases and this can release some pretty nasty fumes. With our settings dialed in, our safety measures in place, it's time to engrave. Place your canvas in the machine, double check the alignment, and basically hit start. When measuring the distance or focusing the lens, do it on the harder part of the canvas, on the edge, to avoid bending or punching a hole through the material. As I said, depending on your design, the speed and power of your laser, and equally important, the lines per centimeter, your engraving might take from close to 1 hour to 2 hours or even more. My testing alone took about 3 hours as I tried to get things dialed in. Once I started engraving in production mode, on average, I was looking at about 1 hour and 20 minutes. When I ran it in 2 passes, it took about 1 hour altogether. The engraving is done, but we're not finished yet. Gently clean the surface to remove any residue left by the engraving. I use baby wipes to wipe the excess material off. This works great as they're often more than 99% water, so it's pretty safe. As a final step, you can go ahead and seal your canvas with a clear spray varnish to protect the paint and engraving. Some of these engravings can take a couple of hours to complete. The paint and fumes can really put the hurts on your laser engraver. This is why you need to make sure you make some time to run a good maintenance on your machine's component. Clean your machine regularly to maintain precision. Check the machine belts and rails for dust and debris. Proper maintenance ensures your laser engraver lasts for years and produces great results. xTool added that the use of air assist helps lower the cleaning frequency. The beauty of laser engraving painted canvases is the freedom to create. You can experiment with colors, textures, canvases, or tiles and try different designs to make something truly one of a kind. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, don't be shy and share your laser engraver creations in the comments below. I would love to see what you've come up with. Once again, thanks a lot for all your support out there and let me know what other laser or CNC related videos you would like to see. Until next time, keep creating and stay inspired. Take care.